Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Glenn, this is my best bud Terrence, and we're officially Beatleologists, I guess is what they call us.
Yep.
We're going to change it up a little bit here today. We're not going to talk about Beatle facts, we're going to talk about conspiracy theories today. And one of the biggest conspiracy theories to this day is that Paul McCartney died in a car accident in November of 1966. It was covered up. He was replaced by someone who looked and sounded like Paul. The boys quit touring, obviously. They came out with Sgt. Pepper, a complete reversal from any Beatles sound from previously. And to this day, people think that that actually happened. What do you think? What's your idea on this whole Paul is dead thing?
What I think we should do to make this interesting is present the two best reasons you could believe the theory is true.
Okay.
And then let's figure out the two reasons why we go, not possible.
Okay. Number one reason that I think there's no way that this is true is that you could not find somebody who looked as much like Paul, who had the talent and voice as Paul. And with so many people were involved in the Beatles crew, the Beatles world, how could he keep it a secret for so long? And those are the reasons against it, in my opinion. Now, the reasons for it. The Beatles were the biggest band in the world. What would happen if the most famous Beatle were suddenly to die? What would happen to sales? What would happen to the group? Right? There was a Paul McCartney look-alike contest held by Dick Clark, supposedly. I guess I've read this in so many different books and over the years. In 1966, they held a Paul McCartney look-alike contest, but the winner of the contest was never announced. So what happened to him? Where did he go? Is he actually Billy Shears? Is he actually Paul McCartney as we know today? And also, a lot of people say, well, okay, Paul was dead. They covered it up. They got a look-alike. They quit touring because it was too obvious. They all wore mustaches, right? Because there was a height difference. Paul's a lot skinnier. He's taller than the other Beatles, when in fact they were all the same height, John, Paul, and George, right? And they quit touring, and that John Lennon possibly wrote all the songs, and that the guy who replaced Paul was a better musician, but John wrote the songs for the Beatles. What do you think? Which one would you go with of those opinions of whether he's alive or dead?
My first dilemma is the voice the same?
Okay.
Could you find a guy who looks like him? Yeah, it's possible.
Possible.
Could you find a guy that sounds like him? Yes, it's possible too.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to put the two together.
Yes.
That makes it much more unlikely.
And we're talking 1966, let's say 67. It's not like today. The technology with what do you call all the stuff we have on the computer now, to do all those changes. I agree. I know what you're saying.
The other thing that I don't like is the simple fact of saying, well, how would the world react if Paul died? Well, of course, it'd be sad, but life would go on. Would the Beatles continue? That would be up to them. Would people still buy the records? Well, if they still like John, George, and Ringo, and if they still release a good song, doesn't the band move on? I feel like people act as if the Titanic is sinking if Paul's gone. It's like, well, it's a tragedy, but there's other people still alive. They're going to do something, or they're not. They could have retired at that point. I'm sure they had a bit of money. I mean, they deal with it. And to say that they have to cover up somebody's death to continue to say that's the only way our career will continue, that doesn't make any sense.
Okay, I'm going to throw something. I'm going to play devil's advocate is what I'm going to do here, because I don't believe Paul is dead. I just believe that it was a hoax put on by the boys. That's my opinion only, of course. But some people actually think that MI5, the Secret Service, were involved in making the Beatles who they were to start with, to bring them to America as a communist plot. These are pretty far theories, but there's a lot of smart people out there who are actually saying these things, who've got some pretty good facts to back them up. So I can't. This is just like I'm just repeating what I've heard. So if this is true, that MI5 put together the Beatles, and they created the Beatles, and they made the Beatles who they were, could they not then have an agenda where that they had to keep Paul alive somehow, to keep the whole thing going, the whole drug culture going and everything, to bring down America at that time, or whatever the reason may be. Some say it's because of the Kennedy assassination that the Beatles were actually created and brought over to cover it all, to get, or to mask that issue before the Warren Commissions came out. So I don't know, man. It's I hear what you're saying, but I don't know. Do you play devil's advocate with that at all? Or is that pretty much your stance?
My next question for you then is, what are some of the most intriguing clues that were originally announced in the 60s that actually prove this point? Because song lyrics and stuff are cool and coincidental, but that's not really proof of anything, right? And even album cover clues, I go, is that enough? That doesn't really prove anything.
And even turning the record backwards, number 9.
Yeah,
number 9,
that doesn't really prove anything. So where is the original evidence of Paul is dead that we go, oh yes?
1969, a radio station somebody called in and gave them all the clues and said, if they call this number, they'll get the truth. And the number was actually on the back of one of the albums. They called the number. They got a hold of one of the Beatles, was it Apple Studios or something? I'm not sure. So to me, it was a planned thing, but whether it's true or not, it's hard to say. I don't believe it. But okay, getting back to your original question, what are the biggest things? The height difference, obviously.
But was the height difference known at that time?
But if you look at Sgt. Pepper or any of the later, Paul is skinnier. He's taller than the other Beatles. The eye color is even different. Paul's brown eyes now become blue. Those are some of the big ones to me. They quit touring. Why did they do that? They were still selling out. They were selling out stadiums. They were just starting basically the year before to sell out stadiums. Why are you going to stop doing that all of a sudden? Those are some things to me that seem kind of suspicious. Some people have noticed that Paul's teeth are totally different. His earlobes are totally different. His nose is different. If you look at 1967, only a year previously in 66.
So there is definitely a lot of cool videos you can go look on YouTube and see where people have done comparisons of Paul's face and personal things and done comparison over the years. There's a lot of them. There's ones that even show his growth through his entire life, from childhood to adulthood, to look for differences. So you can study all this, and it's without a doubt we find this so fascinating.
It is fascinating.
But being fascinating doesn't really still prove that anything's true.
No.
But we're back to here's one thing that boggles most people's mind. Is that if Paul McCartney did die, then the original Paul McCartney was only famous for 3 years.
Yeah.
And the imposter has been famous for over 50 years. So the Paul McCartney we have loved our entire lives has never been the original Paul McCartney.
So does it really matter in the end, is what you're saying? Because Paul, even if he is an imposter, was just as good, if not better, than the original Paul.
So here's an interesting thought. What if they said, Paul has died, let's find a guy that looks like him, sounds like him, just as talented, but his name is John Smith. Oh, and the Beatles have a new member, John Smith.
Yeah.
He's still good looking. He's going to be in the teen magazines. He's the new heartthrob in the group. They record new good songs. Does it matter?
Yeah. There's that, obviously.
At this time, do you know how easy it would have been for the Beatles to find a new member? How many people would have lined up to join the Beatles?
Everybody would have, obviously.
So there wasn't a problem there either, right? So they could have replaced themselves with, better looking guys, more talented, on and on and on. But we have this story. Now, let's talk about this for a moment. If the Beatles themselves were part of it as an inside joke,
which I think, personally,
then what was the purpose of that?
Boredom, maybe. Maybe they knew that one day people would catch on and be intrigued by it and then want to buy all the albums to find out clues, which actually did happen. Sales increased by tenfold after '69 when people started to jump on that bandwagon. you know.
But do you really think it's likely in the late 60s that anybody's looking forward to their future?
I don't know. Fans are pretty
here the
funny
Beatles
that
within
way.
a year would already be broken up.
But did they plan at that time to be broken up? I don't think so. You know.
It's not about planning it, so it's just about that things happen. So, again, what would they gain? You could say, well, they boosted record sales. Maybe they did. Maybe.
Okay, let's.
But even if whether they did or not, is that a reason to do it?
Well, let's take it from this point of view. Let's say they did. Let's say, okay, you're the biggest band in the world. You've done everything. You've made all the money you can possibly make. Now you're bored. You're still a band. You're under contract, but you're bored. Okay, and knowing Lennon with his quirky personality, I mean, maybe he came up with the original idea of let's do something kind of out there. Let's put out these clues on albums and whatever, just for fun. Then, unfortunately, what happened with who's that maniac that just passed away? The guy that murdered all those people, Charles Manson. He comes out and he does all these terrible things and he blames it on the Beatles songs, right? So then maybe, just maybe, they just said, Christ, what did we do? You know, we can't let this out now. It's not a joke anymore. This is serious business. Forget it. Deny, deny, deny. Is that a possibility?
So, one of my thoughts is the majority of the clues seem to come from 1967. But this whole controversy sparked in 69.
Yes.
So why 2 years later?
Because nobody really caught on except when this radio station was informed by an anonymous source that something was going on, and here are the clues to prove that. You know, there's so many things. I mean, the Magical Mystery Tour inserts where everybody has white roses except Paul's is black, and Paul's to this day says that, well, they ran out of red roses or white roses, but in fact there was a ton of them laying around. He could have grabbed, but instead he chose a black rose. To me it looks like it was colored black if you look at the actual picture. So it's kind of, I don't know.
But it could be as innocent. He just happened to grab a black one. And that's it.
It could be.
He didn't care. Maybe he grabbed the one to be different because he was the lead singer on that song.
It's possible. I mean,
again, it doesn't
you know,
really have to mean anything.
I'll believe what Paul says.
The thing I like about the
but
Paul is dead conspiracy is just the fact that there is so many clues. That's the only thing I find intriguing.
And 40 years later,
there's lots of clues.
Yes.
Individually, most of them don't interest me. But it's the fact that you go, boy, is that ever cool that coincidentally that kind of works and that kind of works and that kind of works and that kind of works. And you got all of these ones.
Yeah.
That's what makes it intriguing, is that there's so many.
Yeah, and that
like
40
a
years
great
later,
conspiracy when you have a lot of
I know. Well, even like starting with Sgt. Pepper. I mean, they're in front of a gravesite. If you look at the flowers, it spells out Paul. You look at the other set of flowers, it's a violin, bass, guitar, right? I mean, there's so many clues. You just start with that. George is pointing up at Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock on the back. Paul has his back to the camera. I mean, that's where it starts.
But is it a likely good thing that they just said one day? They could have been just sitting around and said, hey, did you notice that, hey, it looks like that. And then if the Beatles had done this whole thing themselves, they could have had a good laugh. And like as you said, maybe they were bored. And they just finally went, hey, did you ever notice this and this and this? And then they went, well, yeah. And I got that lyric I used in that song we could use. And they could have, for fun, just put this all together themselves.
What were some of the lyrics? Play devil's advocate here. What were some of the lyrics that
well, there's I Buried Paul Backwards, but there's also Strawberry Fields Forever at the end, Cranberry Sauce.
He doesn't say, he actually says I Buried Paul. If you slow it down, you can hear that. You really can. But anyway, go ahead. Keep going.
Things like that. The Walrus was Paul in Glass Onion.
Yep. Here's a clue for you all. Right. The Walrus was Paul.
So there's a few of them little things. But again, does on its own, the Walrus was Paul doesn't really mean anything. Well, it's only because we're making it mean something.
But the walrus does signify death in certain countries. I mean, all these things do tie in to certain things, especially if you're looking at they're into Eastern mysticism at that time. So it is fascinating. What do you guys think? Do you think the Paul today is the Paul of '66? I like to believe he is. I mean, it's fun playing devil's advocate. I mean, you watch films of Paul today. I mean, to me, there's no doubt that that is McCartney who recorded Love Me Do. But some people say you're just not seeing what's right in front of you. I mean, there are people that are still adamant that that is an imposter. William Campbell from Scotland or Ireland, I guess. Scotland. I don't know.
So sadly, we're never going to be able to solve this on our own, but you can leave your comments, good or bad, give us some criticisms on this, and we'll continue this discussion because there's so much to say.
We never even touched on the DNA evidence yet, but we'll touch about that in the next.
So what I like to stick to originally, though, is what was part of the original 60s conspiracy, right? Because now we've got 50 years of people adding to this, and yes, all this other stuff. We could talk about all those kind of things, right? But they're not part of the original clues on the album covers, which is where this all started.
That's
So
true.
I like to start with just that and go, okay, the people believe this based on this. Yes, now we have further reasons to prove it or disprove it. So we'll have to continue that in the next episode. So we thank you for watching, and we love to chat about this stuff. So please come back and we'll talk about it more.
Either way, it's all fun. It's a blast. So take care, guys. Great talking to you. See you next time.
So my dear friends, come back when you can.